is a brief overview of my ambulance project was. If you've watched the previous videos, you'll have a rough idea of what this started off as, what I've done to it. If not, please watch them because I won't be recapping a lot of the work I've already done. The van is 99.9% completed now. I'm just doing finishing touches. Then we're going to live with it for a while and see what changes to be made, what's missing, and so on and so forth. It's a nice day. I'm out in my field, hence the chicken wandering around. Seemed a logical place to film it. We used it last weekend, went to Snowdonia and spent a couple of nights wild camping. Nothing broke, nothing failed, everything worked as expected. Had a rather tight journey down to one of the wild camping sites, and I certainly won't go there again. We fitted down a very narrow road with, in places, only inches to spare. It was a bit scary. But there's the outside of the van. So if you look at previous videos, there's a 275 watt panel on the roof. I've got a Vision Plus television antenna at the front there, just in front of the awning. And there's also the original ambulance roof window, an extractor fan, and the outlet from our gas instantaneous water heater. I shall now do a quick tour of the outside of the van. This particular model of was-bodied ambulance is a Type B. It comes with this one large external locker, originally for the spinal board. I've split it off for the gas cylinder, and I've put in a drop vent on both sides, one over the gas tank and one over in the corner. I've partitioned it off simply to stop the risk of falling objects clobbering the gas tank. Couldn't make the partition much more because I need to be able to see the gauge at the top of the tank, and I also wanted access so I could get it in and out. We've got some storage on the side there, and I'm making use of the straps that came with the ambulance for chairs, bits and pieces. I've got a small table just clipped in up there, and the inevitable umbrella in the UK. You can never be without an umbrella. I'm going to put some additional removable shelves and bits and pieces in here as I need it, but this is what we need for the time being. I've got plenty of space to store some more stuff. The van came fitted by default with these LED lights. They're scene lights, effectively. They were operated by the ambulance crew. I've modified them. They now work with the reversing camera. It's very useful to be able to see down the side of the vehicle because these lights are fitted on the sides and the rear of the vehicle. I've also installed a switch inside so that we can turn them on from inside the van as well. They're completely isolated from the original Genesis system because I wanted to be able to manually control them. There's a CCTV camera up the top there, and I will be putting another one on the other side. I've got a few holes to fill, assuming I don't do something with them. There were blue lights there, and well, I've got that blanking grommet. There are magnetic catches for the rear doors. They hinge back onto these magnetic catches here. We have an electric step which I need to replace the chain on because part of it is broken. It works, but it's seen better days. And this particular model of ambulance has a sliding door. On the wall there you can see the switches I was referring to. The lower two switches are a couple of inside lights and the outside LED lights, and the upper switches do all the remaining inside lights. I've kept all the regional fluorescent lights. We won't use them very often, but they are useful when you need a bit of decent lighting. So the ambulance comes with a sliding door. It's a big one. All the windows are tinted. They've got internal Venetian blinds and they're double glazed. It's very private inside. People can't see in, which is obviously what is supposed to happen with an ambulance. Moving around to the rear of the van. Again, the original blue lights will be removed, blanked off. I've got two reversing cameras up there. One actually looking down at the step, so I can actually see properly where the back of the vehicle is. The other one I use as a rear view mirror. It's tied into a different tow guard mirror camera, and it's working very well as a rear view mirror, very well indeed. Did I say that before? I've removed all the stickers. I had to do a repair on the door there. We don't use the big back door very much. A couple of reasons. Firstly, the shower's in the way, and secondly, that hinge is very, very weak over there. I don't think it'll last very long. God knows how you get it apart, but I've decided that we don't need to use that main door, only this smaller door here. The shower room pretty much obstructs the door. The external pipework is there for a reason. I'm going to design a solar hot water panel, and I will then be plumbing it into this pipework here with taps and quick connectors. Hence the reason for putting this pipework externally. Plus, of course, it made it easier for me, and it makes it less ugly inside the van. I had originally intended to try and fit the instantaneous water heater on this wall, which is why it's about 6 inches away from the back door, but I couldn't quite make it work. There wasn't enough space between the width of the shower and where the bed is going, so I couldn't quite do it. So I've ended up with a heater somewhere else, and actually where it is now is probably better, because it's, from an accessible point of view, operating the controls, putting it here or in the external locker, which was another place I could put it, wasn't a good idea. That piece of copper there is the hot water. I will be insulating it, but that's probably where I will tee into for the solar hot water. In the meantime, it's a very good place for hanging the curtain. Karen made all these curtains from material we bought in a local shop in Oswestry. And then moving over this side, I've got the rear parking sensor system there, mounted where I can get to it. The awning handle clipped to the wall. You can see remnants of the original plastic from the ambulance and a bit of the stainless steel there. I've reused as much of the original material in the ambulance as possible, mainly to keep the price down, but primarily because it's damn good stuff. So I just simply cut that panel down. They originally had a cupboard there and a locker, and all the oxygen tanks used to be in there, and I've simply ended up with a piece of plywood butted up to it and mounted securely top and bottom on battens. This van, there's a catch there for the large door, allow it to fold back completely. Another double glazed window with blind. You can see the solar panel just slightly overhanging this edge. It's a household solar panel. It's 1.6 metres or thereabouts, or 1.9 metres long. And I've moved it over slightly this side to allow room for the awning on the other side. We have mains hookup and water. I'd love to put the water filler a bit higher, but that's already about as high as I can reach when we're using jerry cans. We carry a couple of jerry cans as well as the onboard water tank. And that is the battery locker. Originally this had 4 batteries in there, 2 auxiliary batteries, 1 for the tail lift and 1 for the radio. At the moment I'm running 2 100 amp hour AGM batteries. They're Lucas batteries. 1 originally came in the van and I bought an identical one to match. The fusing and wiring, I've reused all that was provided by the ambulance converter. Obviously some of it's been removed, and I've created myself a handy storage locker over there for my electric hookup cable, water cables, bits and pieces, tools and so on and so forth. They're nice deep lockers. They go back 18 inches. And then the blue device that you can just see at the top there is my Victron inverter, which I use for the mains fridge. I haven't done anything with the front of the van other than replace the bumper, so no need to show you anything of that. Behind the passenger seat we have one on the right hand side of the 2 original Voltronic mains battery chargers. On the left is my EPEVA MPPT solar tracker. Above that is the MPPT Wi-Fi interface, so I can monitor the status with a smartphone or a PC. And to the right, if it's visible in the shade, I'm not sure if it is a Sterling Power B2B charger. That actually is coupled up to the auxiliary battery and the chassis battery, and it basically uses excess solar power to keep the chassis battery charged up as well. You can buy dual battery MPPT controllers. They're very expensive. This was 60 quid I think, this little device here, and all the time the auxiliary batteries are above 13.3 volts it will trickle feed about an amp to the chassis battery, which is brilliant. Why have I left the spirit level there? Right, just behind the spirit level is a fuse, 30 amp fuse. It's on a trailing lead. That's there in case I need to disconnect the tracer MPPT controller. It's a 30 amp fuse. It's on the input from the solar panels, and there's a rule of thumb: you should always disconnect the solar panels first and battery last, and when you're reconnecting it should always be battery first, solar panels last, to avoid possibility of damage to the tracker. So if I need to disconnect the batteries, I can just pull that fuse first of all, then disconnect the batteries, and everything's fine. This cupboard here I haven't touched at all. We've kept it as it was. I've got my ramps there for levelling the front wheels, and we've got a couple of ex-NATO water carriers there. They're 20 odd litres each. Very handy. We did run out of water last weekend when I was having a shower, ironically, and having a bit of spare water on hand works a treat. We don't intend to drive the van with the main tank full up, and having these two water carriers here helps to balance it up, because there's quite a lot of weight on the right hand side of the van. At the very bottom is the Espacio D4 diesel heater. If you've watched previous videos you'll see that I did a lot of work to take the heater pipes from that heater away from where they originally ran, which was round to the right. They now go through the underneath the floor. They come out on the right hand side of the van, which I will show you shortly. I produced 3 separate videos when I made this bulkhead door, so I won't go into great detail other than it works beautifully. I've got bolts on it and obviously a latch so we can bolt it shut when we're sleeping. I fitted a draft excluder on the bottom, which does 2 things: prevents any draft from underneath, and also just helps, it provides a friction interference fit to the floor, and therefore the door won't blow in breezes, it stays where we put it. I've got these little cheap basket springy things which I bought from eBay. They're very, very cheap. I think I bought the 2 for £4 or £5. Very handy for maps and bits and pieces. We'll probably buy more of them. The television aerial is in the top left hand locker. That's what's covered for a pre-video. The comms locker is currently empty. I may reinstate the CCTV system, I don't know, but at the moment I'm just using it for general storage. The aircon doesn't work as far as I can tell. Chances are there's no gas in the system. It blows air around, but it does require the vehicle's engine running, but it's a job for, well, winter's coming now. I don't think I need to get that sorted out in the foreseeable future. The kitchen roll holder was there as part of the original van. Very, very, very handy. All the cabinetry here on the right hand side I've re-engineered, chopped and changed. Again, you can see that in previous videos. The drawer unit I've reduced in height and depth. The cupboard at the bottom there I've done the same with. Oops, excuse me. That originally housed, or the seat was originally on there with a seat belt. I've recovered maybe 8 inches of depth there. We've got a triplex cooker, Thetford triplex cooker. All the cabinetry, as mentioned in previous videos, is oak. It's all reclaimed floorboards that I've jointed, sanded, and so on and so forth. That picture there simply covers a load of holes. The thing with an ambulance is, unless you gut it completely, you end up with lots of holes, as you can see there. The defibrillator I think was bolted there, but there's loads and loads of holes under there. So we've just used a sign. It used to be in our barn as a hint to the chickens, but I gave it a wash and we've used it in here. The display panel there is the original display panel for the Xantex inverter. The Xantex inverter was not in this van when I bought it, but the display panel simply fills a hole. There's a volume control there, which is for the 2 speakers behind me, linked to the radio in the cab, and we have the control panel for the air conditioning and the heating. These speakers here used to be the speakers for the intercom and for the voice announcements from the Genesis electronic system that the ambulance came equipped with. At the moment, again, they're just fitting holes. I haven't used them yet, although I may at a later date use them for excuse me, may at a later date use them for the television or something similar. I reinstated the grab handles. At some point in time I will be adding some extra insulation to this ceiling, but for the time being I've kept these grab handles. They're very useful for putting coat hangers on, bits and pieces. Also, because this was a neonatal ambulance, children were transported in it, it's got stickers and bits and pieces left over. I bought a cheap clock from Tesco's, fits in that gap very nicely, and there's one of the blinds that Karen made. She's made all the curtains, all the blinds, bits and pieces, and I think she's done it very well. I couldn't do it myself, that's for sure. The sink's very handy. When we're travelling, we store stuff in the sink so it doesn't jump about. Got a 12-volt socket there. That metal thing was originally the oxygen tank holder. We now use it for pouring spare water into. So for example, we boiled the kettle and there's some water left in the kettle, it goes in there, then we can use that for washing up. It just saves throwing water away. I've got the original Genesis control panel there for the saloon, and a cheap ammeter there, which is very, very, very handy. It shows the current being drawn. At the moment it's saying 0 because the solar panels are doing all the work. Then over to the right is my instantaneous water heater with a gas tap. Slight blunder there, didn't think it through too well. Put the gas tap directly under the flap for the batteries. Makes installing the batteries a little bit entertaining, but I've mounted this instantaneous water heater on this stainless steel sheet that was already there as part of the van. I have made a rudimentary flue. If this water heater works as well as, well, it's working very well at the moment, then I'm going to put in a more permanent flue. But I wasn't too sure whether this heater would actually do the job. There's a very good video on YouTube where an owner's actually use it in a recirculating way to build up a small reservoir of hot water for a shower, but I haven't run into problems. It works. He was getting cycling issues, but I have actually got in this van, if you look at the previous video, I've got expansion vessels as part of the water system, and we get a constant flow. Then we have a television, and it's one of the reasons why I couldn't put the water heater over there. It would have interfered with the television. And it has a strap. Again, that strap was something that came with the van. Little seat belt, stops the television swinging around. I'm going to be putting a shelf up there because I don't like the look of that cable. It's ugly. I need to hide it. So that wall that we're looking at now, painted green. I've done various experiments in this van. I've used vinyl cladding, vinyl material. For example, these were originally grab handles. I've insulated those and used a bit of spare vinyl. There's a headbutt pad above the door behind me which is in vinyl, and I also did the inside edge of the opening for the bed in that. I won't be using vinyl again in places where anything comes into contact with it, whether that be furniture or people. It scuffs too easily. So next van build, probably won't be using any vinyl at all. Paint is easy to use. I've used a bathroom paint, so it's washable, but unfortunately my choice of plywood for this panel wasn't a good one. This is a veneered hardwood panel. The veneer is paper thin, and in places the wet or the water in the paint caused the ply to bubble in places. Maybe if I'd sealed it with a sealant first, sanding sealer or something like that, would have been fine, but I didn't think of it at the time. Bit of plastic edging on there just to trim it off, and then we come back to some more of the original cabinets. We're using these as wardrobes. There is obviously an intrusion into the lower one there, where the gas bottle is, but that's using a wardrobe. This one's being used for clothes, the duvet goes in there and bits and pieces. The ambulance came with a whiteboard and lots of hooks for hanging coats on. You can see I've installed a CO2 meter monitor over there. We've got a small hammer for breaking the glass should we need to get out in an accident or anything like that. There's a switch there which operates that light up there, so that we got some light in the back there when we're in the wardrobe. And also there's a Luna McGurk branded USB charging point. The speakers are the two speakers I was mentioning earlier on, which I just connect to the radio and give us a bit of stereo separation when we listen to the radio. The television, just whizzing back to the television, is a little cello unit. The TV's fine, the sound is rubbish. It's about as bad as you could possibly imagine a bad thing to be. It's not even worth contemplating listening to. So I've bought a Creative Movo, and that is a surprisingly good little Bluetooth speaker. It's also got a photo in socket. Another one of those little baskets, very handy for the remote control. But that speaker makes all the difference, and that's what we use with the TV. And we also use that speaker with my iPad and bits and pieces. Coming back round here, we've now got another window and blind, and the bed frame and the headboard. I made the headboard, Karen covered it, Karen made these curtains. The bed frame is a IKEA futon frame, and the mattress we're using at the moment is also a futon mattress. I found it too hard, too uncomfortable. It's not thick enough. I certainly wouldn't like to sleep on one of these regularly. So underneath the bed we've also got in the box a Van Gogh Shangri-La self-inflated mattress, and that made all the difference. And the way I've designed this bed, and it's not going to be easy to film that in here right now, is the bed goes into the opening under the sink. Let's see if I can show you that. So as you can see, there's our kitchen unit. Again, made out of oak, drawers, and then a sprung catch base door, simply to get into the area under the sink, and it's a very good place for storing rubbish bags and bits and pieces. In a previous video, you'll see that inside this box here is my water tank, the expansion vessel on the left, and the pump on the right, plus various bits and pieces for plumbing. There's a couple of switches there. One is for the cooker, and the other one is for the extractor fan in our waterless toilet. I won't call it a composting toilet because it'll never be composting anything. And also operates the pump. And I've got the pump and the extractor fan on the same switch because frankly that fan's not going to be on at night, but it is important to be able to turn the pump off should you run out of water. Now, when I bought this fan, I had intended to put the seat that I'm sitting on now on that side that you're looking at, but there is a large metal box that this seat frame that I'm sitting on now is attached to. It originally had two passenger seats on it. It's bonded to the vehicle, it's bolted to the vehicle, and I made a decision very early on that I wasn't going to try and get it out because it would have caused damage. That meant that the seat ended up where I am now, and it also determined how our bed would end up, because we absolutely were determined that we were going to have a shower and toilet in here. I wasn't going to rip out all these lovely cabinets because I built this van on a budget. I didn't want to spend more than about £1,500 in total on doing the interior, so we couldn't put the shower and anything up there to make that space. That meant the bed had to go widthwise in the centre, and to do that you need somewhere with your feet. So the bed, when extended, sits on this platform here, and when the bed's folded up we use storage boxes for extra storage, or we will be, IKEA crates. Also we suspect that we'll end up putting the dog beds up here as well, bits and pieces, anything that we can take off easily, so the storage space isn't lost. It works beautifully, and the bed, you know, our feet are effectively underneath this area here. As I say, piloted it last weekend, not a problem at all. So I'm very, very happy with the end result. That is the white box that originally had two seats bolted to it, swivel seats, seat belts. It's a very, very strong box. It's 1/4 inch steel in there. It's extraordinarily strong. I had great fun drilling it to mount the hinges for the bed frame. The bed frame, I won't be unfolding it. It's just a flat bed that goes basically in that hole there. I've made a oak box, and that's at the moment. It's got our bits and pieces in there, an self-inflated mattress. You may have noticed this little thing. When I built the frame for the cooker, I was going to build a pull-out drawer here. We had this plastic trolley. I bought this at the NEC in Birmingham and brought about 25 kilos of catalogues home in it. It's a good little strong box. Those of you that ever owned a Citroen Picasso would recognise it. The Citroen Picasso came with one of the little boxes. It fitted in this perfectly. Again, I've used a strap, one of the ambulance straps, to retain it. There are stops at the back of it so that it doesn't clobber, or it can't clobber because you can see the handle fits under the cooker beautifully as well. But if it went in too far, it'd hit that pipe, which is our heater pipe, and that is the heater pipe that I've redirected from the original outlet, which was to my right when the ambulance was actually in operational service. Got a little bin there, which we tuck away in this box when we're in transit. But that was just a perfect fit, absolutely perfect. All I had to do is frame it out slightly and allow space for the wheels. And I'm very, very pleased with that. Here's one of the heatless outlets here. I've got another one under the floor in the cab. It's just under the oak floor there, so we can actually warm the cab up. And then the final one is in the shower room. Now, filming this shower is going to probably be a little bit hard. This camera I'm using doesn't have a very good wide angle lens, and I'm really struggling to get this camera in position so I can actually see what I'm doing. I have the smallest tray I could buy. It's 585mm by 585mm. I didn't trim the edges because both Karen and I are, shall we say, getting on the years now. We need our space, and this is also why I made this room bigger and didn't put the instantaneous heater on the wall I mentioned earlier on. We need turning room. So in there is a carpet tile, £2 from B&M or whatever. That just covers up the tray, prevents damage and so on and so forth. I've got a little tiny domestic sink. That's about as small as you're ever going to get. It doesn't hold a huge amount of water. It's enough for washing teeth, cleaning teeth, and so on and so forth. Bit of fun and games getting the tap for it because there was only a 25mm hole, but it's using a standard pop-up waste, and I've used a standard domestic 32mm household waste as well for the outlet. On the wall is a thermostatic shower. It's actually a bidet shower head, and the head itself hangs perfectly okay on that rail, which was originally one of the stainless steel handrails in the ambulance, which I've reused as a towel rail. I've got a really cheap and cheerful plastic cabinet which we bought in B&Q for about 20 quid. It's lightweight. I've done a bit of work on it to strengthen it inside, and you can see we've got a child catch on the side of it. Same on the fridge in the front of the van, which I will talk about shortly. That's just to stop it bursting open. I reused as much of that's a door, or one of the doors that I've reused there at the top there, and I replaced the fluorescent light that was originally there with a couple of 3 LEDs. Right at the very top, I cannot see, so is it there? Yes, it is. Right at the very top is the original extractor fan from the van, extractor fan that came with the van. That's a two-way fan. It can extract or provide air intake. And directly above us, do forgive me, I'm struggling to actually see what I'm looking at. Those little vents just allow for the extractor fan to draw air out of the main body of the van when we're cooking, for example, if we've got the bathroom door shut. And it also, obviously, you should always have vents in bathrooms and things, or anything in a closed space, otherwise the door won't shut. I've carpeted the outside wall. The inside of the wall is, or the inside of the shower is trimmed with Saniclad, and I've got 90-degree angle there. Then on the left hand side there is a shower screen, another ex-ambulance strap holding it back. That is out of the caravan. I think I paid £15 for it. That prevents any water ingress either onto this mat here or this recycled door which came out of a pine wardrobe. I had originally intended to make an oak door, but it was way too heavy for the hinges and I knew the thing would rip off, so I've recycled an old wardrobe. Now, the thing that people may or may not be interested in is this little toilet. Again, you can see I've reused the doors from the ambulance, and I've made a little air inlet grill there, using just some bits and pieces I had laying around, plus one of the original door handles. There is the heater. It's actually a Truma outlet there. That's the heater outlet for the shower. This is a separate urine diverting composting toilet. So I've got a separate tank underneath the van for the black waste or black water. We give it a quick squirt from the shower head just to flush out the water. Also under the van is a one-way valve, which allows the urine through into the tank but nothing back, so that deals with any smells or anything like that. And then I'm using a very simple bucket lined with, or it's actually a waste paper bin, very flexible, lined with a plastic bag for the number 2s. And we've used it a few times. There's no smells in this vehicle at the moment. It works. I haven't got a cassette to empty. We carry a bag of sawdust that I recycle from my woodworking machines just to sprinkle over the waste, and it's working. I'm not going to leave it in here for weeks and weeks and weeks, so I don't expect to compost it down. All you're doing is drawing the moisture out of the poo. End result is once the poo's dry, you don't have any smells. And the way we vent this toilet, I may well do a separate video on this entirely, but I've created a little extractor fan. It's actually underneath the cover there, using a PC fan, a rainwater pipe diverter, and that goes to an outlet on the roof. So when there is a requirement to remove any smells from this room, that's what the little fan does, and that works completely in isolation to this main extractor fan up in the roof there. In fact, I'll take the top off and show you. There we are. The polystyrene lid is literally just a lid. It's a very comfortable, very warm lid, but it is just a lid. No point with this type of toilet using a conventional toilet lid, because you need to restrict the ability for flies to get in. So this is all properly sealed. You can see that I've got seals all around the edge of the plastic seat. These are actually plinth seals. I've got foam E-seals all along the edges. Whole point is to stop flies getting in, because you don't want those basically. Now, on the left is simply just a plumbing area. The water pipes, gas pipe, so on and so forth, go up the inside wall to the instantaneous heater. It's just neater. There's the truma. There's the hot air pipe there. Cable going to my fan. I've made a partition so that the waste area is isolated from the other areas, again just to try and contain any spills and so on and so forth. That's an Adidas waste paper basket. I actually used 2. I've used the inner ring to actually create a place where I can wrap a plastic bag around it, and we can actually change the bag that we use, the waste bag. We can actually change that through the hole in this seat. We don't have to take it apart. You can see I've made some little red thumb screws there. We can just drop the actual blue thing off, change the bag, and when we get the hang of it, we can just about do it through the hole as well. So on the right you can see, on the right you can see my little extractor fan. It's a garden rainwater diverter box, and the 60mm fan fitted in that box perfectly. You can see the cable coming out of the side of where the pipe would originally gone to the water butt. Then I've used a very small piece of, it's actually a piece of hose from a hoover, that connects to a piece of 41mm plumbing pipe, and that white pipe, you can just see on the right there, goes all the way up the wall in the void, the ventilation void in the van, and out onto the roof. So that's my extract, so that, you know, if we have done anything in the toilet and we can't throw the waste away in the plastic bag, any smells are being sucked out of that unit like that. And it works very, 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 very well. And as you can see, I've designed the whole thing so that if I need to, I can get it apart at various levels, either by taking the removing these screws and taking this lid off, or I could actually lift the whole thing off. But in doing so, I had to make sure I could find a way of sealing it from water ingress. Oh, battery's going, time to find the mains. Now, being an ambulance, it wouldn't be complete without a blue light. I'm not sure what the rules are in other parts of the world, but in the UK, unless an ambulance is being used as an ambulance, you're not even allowed to drive with external blue lights even covered up. They have to be completely removed. This spotlight, or this light unit here, was in the van. It's called a trauma light. It's got white LEDs in it and blue LEDs. So that's a token remnant of the previous licensed ambulance, one little blue light. It's quite useful. The this white light's quite useful. It's pretty much all we need to work by, or see by rather, cups of tea, bits and pieces, or when watching television. We have this one light on, but I do have the ability to turn on all the other fluorescent lights in the van. On a previous video you may have seen that I converted this one to run on LED. There's a switch there so we can toggle it between LED and fluorescent, but all the other fluorescents are on when needed, although I may end up putting a metal blanket plate there if it gets too hot. But that provides an immense amount of light in the van for working should I need it. But if we zoom in on the panel, there's still reasonable amount of sunshine outside at the moment, but that's the current draw at the moment. So if I turn off the fluorescent lights, each one of these lights, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. They each draw just over an amp each. I wouldn't have those running for long periods of time overnight. One thing that did surprise me, the amount of current the heater draws. The glow plug in the heater draws 12 amps, or the whole heater, it's drawing about 12 amps before the glow plug turns off. It's quite a beefy monster. It will be interesting to see how I get on with battery life in the winter, which is primarily what I built this van for. Quick swivel round to the fridge that I just mentioned very briefly. I've done a whole video on mains fridges, but the most important thing about this fridge is that thing. Oh, I'm looking at the mirror, sorry. There's a mirror over there I'm looking at, thinking where's my hang on. I put a mirror in, just obviously very useful to have a mirror in any living quarters, and that makes the whole room look a lot bigger, to the point where I completely forgot to point the camera at. Right, swing around to the fridge proper, there we go. These are just out of boots, they're child locks, self-adhesive pads. There's no way that fridge door is going to come open when we're driving, whereas if we didn't have that fitted, it would swing open with these. And you can see nothing in there at all at the moment. Well, I've cleaned it out and we're not using it, no point running it. I've had this on long-term test, as again, if you've watched my previous videos, you know I'm very keen on mains fridges, or basically anything that doesn't involve spending huge amounts of money on camper van specific stuff. This has worked a treat. We did have one slight mishap. We didn't secure a plastic carton of milk properly and we had a leakage. So we now modified how we cope with that, and we're now keeping a tea towel underneath the fridge, just so that if we get any drips and drops, it stays in that and doesn't go down the sides and over the drawers and everywhere else where it went. And ironically, we didn't notice it. It actually happened on the way home last weekend. So no harm done. Easy to mop up. One of the advantages with all this plastic furniture is very easy to clean up. But the last thing I want is milk getting behind everything, because milk smells horrible. So that's one little modification. Tea towel under the fridge. And then just briefly moving into the van, I think I've shown all this before. All the Genesis system, it's better if you look at some of the other videos I've got, because you can see it all behind the seats far better than you can see now. The seats are covered with very, very cheap but surprisingly good vinyl covers we bought from an eBay seller in Bulgaria. £30 for the pair. Extremely good for the money. I could not even buy the material, let alone make it myself as a similar. I've got a cheap Android head unit in there. The sat-nav works a treat, but oh, it's slow. It's like everything Android is slow. Android boots up, first thing it does is search for thousands and thousands of updates, and then CPU use is 100% forever and a day until it's done all its updates. Oh, Android annoys me something rotten in the way they haven't thought about the functionality first and back-end functions second. But it works, it does the job. I'm pretty impressed with what we get out of it for what it costs. And then the last thing to show you is, I may have mentioned before, but one of the members of the ambulance conversion group on Facebook was kind enough to send me his old main control panel. The main use of this really is it gives a bit of battery monitoring. it gives some visual indication of any problems. It's allowed me to operate a couple of things I couldn't operate before, mainly the alley lights above the cab doors. I didn't have the ability to turn those on and off before, so rather than put a switch in somewhere, I'm using one of the buttons on there to do it. I can't remember which one it is. The various labels on the buttons don't match up because that came from a different ambulance to this, so the labels mean different things. But I've got a cancel function. I can use the keyless running option, which is primarily what I wanted for. I replaced the display. The original display was 40, which is why Craig kindly gave it to me, but I managed to buy a new display and fit that. It's temporarily tacked into where the radio used to be. It's not an ideal fit, but it'll do for now. And then below that I have the tow guard, reversing camera, dash cam, mirror. I may put some example footage up from that. It's very, very good. You can either have the dash cam on and watch what's ahead of you, which is a bit pointless, or you can switch over to the rear mirror, or you can split the two. Now we have on board our little friends, Susie and Molly. What are you, Molly? They're going to test the camper van tonight, aren't you? You're going to test the camper van tonight? Or are you going to escape? Uh-oh. I haven't slept in this yet, so we may actually do an experiment in here tonight. TV's working, good signal from the Vision Plus antenna. Oh, Corgis have escaped. I just thought I'd film the scene lights in all their glory. I may have forgotten to mention that all the rear lights are LED as well, and the side lights are LED. Unfortunately the headlights are boring halogen, not particularly good. But there you go, that's a night scene with the scene lights under the awning. Just gives you an idea of the level of lighting you can get from these lights. Very handy indeed. Anyway, thanks for watching.